Welcome, friend. Tonight we walk a quiet path together through the gentle hours of darkness. Let the weight of the day begin to soften now, like snow melting slowly in spring. There is nowhere else you need to be in this moment, nothing more to accomplish. The world outside will wait for you, patient as the mountains, still as ancient stone. Here in the sanctuary of this quiet night, you are held by something greater than words. Take a breath now, slow and deep, feeling your chest rise like a wave approaching shore. And as you release that breath, let it carry away whatever no longer serves your peace. The mind may still be busy, thoughts flickering like fireflies in the summer dark. That is perfectly natural, perfectly welcome, for even fireflies eventually find rest. You do not need to chase your thoughts or push them away with any force. Simply notice them, the way you might notice clouds drifting across a moonlit sky. They come, they pass, and beneath them the sky remains unchanged, vast and serene. Somewhere in the distance, perhaps you can imagine the soft sound of temple bells. They ring once, twice, then fade into the silence that follows all sacred things. This silence is not empty but full, rich with the presence of simply being alive. A candle flickers somewhere in the darkness, its flame steady and warm and golden. It asks nothing of you, this small light, only that you allow yourself to be near it. The flame does not struggle to burn brightly or worry about when it will end. It simply gives its light, moment by moment, breath by breath, without hesitation or fear. There is wisdom in that flame, a teaching older than any book or temple scroll. To be present, to offer what you have, to trust the darkness that surrounds you. Peace is not something we create through effort or will or careful planning. It is what remains when we stop struggling, when we surrender to what is. Like the bottom of a lake, when the waves finally settle into stillness. The mud drifts downward, the water clears, and we see what was always there. Clarity, depth, a reflection of the sky above in the water below. Tonight, we invite that settling, that natural return to the stillness within you. There is nothing to fix, nothing to solve, nothing to become other than what you are. Rain begins to fall outside, soft and steady, washing the earth clean of the day. Each drop finds its way home, to soil, to leaf, to the waiting mouths of rivers. The rain does not worry about where it lands or whether it will be received. It simply falls, trusting the ground to accept it, trusting the cycle to continue. There is a story told in the mountain monasteries, passed from teacher to student across centuries. It speaks of a traveller who walked for many years seeking the source of all wisdom. This traveller crossed deserts and rivers, climbed peaks shrouded in mist and silence. He studied with scholars who spoke in riddles and hermits who spoke not at all. He gathered knowledge, the way some people gather stones, heavy and numerous and cold. Yet the more he learned, the further away the truth seemed to drift from his grasp. One autumn evening, exhausted and near despair, he arrived at a small temple. The temple was ordinary, its wooden walls weathered by countless seasons of rain and sun. An old monk sat on the porch, sweeping leaves that had fallen from a maple tree. The traveller approached and asked if he might rest there for the night before continuing. The monk looked up with eyes clear as mountain water and nodded once, slowly. That evening, they shared a simple meal of rice and vegetables in comfortable silence. The traveller noticed how the monk moved with an unhurried grace, each gesture complete. There was no wasted motion, no sense of rushing towards something that lay ahead. After the meal, the traveller could not contain his questions any longer. He told the monk of his journey, the teachers he had sought, the wisdom he had chased. He spoke of his frustration, his longing, the emptiness that followed every new teaching. The monk listened without interruption, his face soft in the light of the oil lamp. When the traveller finished speaking, the monk was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to a corner of the room where a clay pot rested. He lifted the pot and brought it to the traveller, holding it carefully in both hands. The pot was old, its surface cracked and mended many times over the years. Some of the cracks were filled with gold, shining like rivers in the lamplight. The traveller took the pot and turned it slowly, examining each fracture and repair. The monk spoke at last, his voice low and unhurried like water over smooth stones. He said that this pot had broken many times in its long life in the temple. Each time it shattered, someone had gathered the pieces and joined them again with gold. The pot was not beautiful despite its cracks, but because of them, he explained. The gold-filled lines were a map of everything the pot had survived, every fall and fracture. The traveller held the pot in his hands and felt something shift inside his chest. He realised he had been seeking wisdom as something perfect, unbroken, complete. But wisdom, like the pot, was made more beautiful by what it had survived. The cracks were not failures to be hidden, but journeys to be honoured. His own doubts, his struggles, his unanswered questions were not signs of weakness. They were the gold-filled lines of his own becoming, the proof that he was alive. That night, the traveller slept more deeply than he had in many years. He dreamed of rivers that flowed uphill and stars that sang in voices like children. When he woke, the monk was already sweeping leaves in the pale morning light. The traveller understood that he had found what he had been seeking all along. Not an answer, but a question that no longer needed to be answered. Not perfection, but a peace that could hold all the imperfections of being human. He stayed at that temple for many seasons, learning to sweep leaves with full attention. He learned that wisdom was not in the accumulation of knowledge, but in its release. Each leaf he swept was a thought he let go, a burden he set down by the path, and in the emptiness that followed, something vast and quiet began to grow. Peace is not something we create, it is what remains when we stop struggling. Let your breath move now like those leaves, falling gently, finding their way to rest. There is no need to hold anything too tightly, not even these words as they pass. They are offered like the sound of rain, meant to wash over you and continue on. The night deepens around you, soft and dark and full of unseen kindness. Somewhere, an owl calls out once and then waits, listening for a response. The trees stand in their patient rows, their branches holding the weight of starlight. They do not strain or struggle under this burden, but accept it with quiet grace. The stars above have travelled millions of years to reach your eyes in this moment. Ancient light, older than memory, arriving precisely when and where it was meant to. There is a timing to all things that we cannot see but can learn to trust. The flower blooms when the conditions are right, not a moment before or after. The wave crests and falls according to laws too deep for the mind to fully grasp. And you, lying here in the stillness, are part of that same unfolding mystery. Your heart beats without your instruction, steady and faithful as a temple drum. Your lungs draw breath and release it, a rhythm older than thought itself. There is an intelligence in your body that knows exactly how to keep you alive. It asks for nothing in return, no gratitude, no recognition, no reward. Only that you sometimes pause long enough to feel its gentle, tireless work. Tonight, we honour that quiet wisdom, the body's ancient knowing of how to rest. The muscles can soften now, releasing the tension held from the hours of the day. The jaw unclenches, the shoulders drop, the hands unfold like flowers at dawn. There is permission here to let go completely, to be held by the darkness. The earth beneath you is solid and patient, and it will not let you fall. It has supported mountains and oceans and every creature that has ever walked its surface. It can easily hold the weight of your worries, your doubts, your unspoken fears. Give them to the ground beneath you. Let them sink down into the soil. The earth knows what to do with heavy things. It transforms them into new life. In the silence between heartbeats, something opens that has no name, a space where the self becomes quiet and the world becomes impossibly beautiful. The ordinary becomes sacred when we bring our full attention to its presence. A single breath, a single moment, a single star burning in the infinite dark. Another story rises now from the well of ancient memory, patient and clear. This one speaks of a painter who lived alone in a cottage by a bamboo grove. She had spent her entire life trying to capture the essence of bamboo on paper. Her walls were covered with paintings, hundreds of them, in every style and season. Bamboo in mist, bamboo in moonlight, bamboo bending in the winds of autumn. Yet she was never satisfied with her work, always seeing what was missing. The gap between what her eyes beheld and what her brush could capture seemed infinite. One winter, a travelling merchant came to her door, seeking shelter from the cold. She welcomed him in and prepared tea while the snow fell heavily outside. The merchant noticed the paintings that covered every surface of the small room. He exclaimed at their beauty, the way the ink seemed to breathe with life. But the painter shook her head and pointed to the bamboo grove beyond the window. She said that her paintings were only shadows of shadows, pale imitations of truth. The real bamboo stood there, indifferent to art, perfect in its simple being. No brush could capture the sound of wind through its leaves at midnight. No ink could hold the way light changed on its surface with the passing clouds. The merchant was quiet for a moment, warming his hands around the tea bowl. Then he asked her a question that she would remember for the rest of her life. He asked whether the bamboo knew it was beautiful, or if it simply grew. The painter set down her brush and looked out at the grove she had studied so long. The stalks stood tall and green against the white curtain of falling snow. They did not pose or perform or try to be more beautiful than they were. They simply existed, rooted in the earth, reaching toward the sky, utterly complete. She realized then that she had been trying to capture something that could not be caught, not because it was elusive, but because there was nothing to catch in the first place. Beauty was not a separate thing that could be extracted and preserved on paper. It was the whole process, the seeing and the painted and the space between. Her striving, her dissatisfaction, her endless reaching for perfection were the very walls. They blocked the very thing she sought by insisting that it be somewhere other than here. That night, after the merchant had gone to sleep by the fire, she made one last painting. She did not think about technique or composition or what she wanted to achieve. She simply let her hand move, following impulses older than reason or intention. The brush danced across the paper like a leaf falling through the autumn air. When she finished, she looked at what she had made and felt nothing at all. No pride, no disappointment, no judgment of any kind rose in her quiet mind. There was only the painting, the ink still wet, the silence of the snowy night, and in that emptiness she found what she had been searching for all her life. Peace is not found in the achievement of our goals, but in the release of them. The bamboo does not try to be beautiful, it simply allows itself to grow. Perhaps there is something in your own life that you have been trying too hard to capture. Some feeling, some state, some version of yourself that seems just out of reach. What if you could set down that brush, even for this one quiet night? What if the perfection you seek was already here, hidden in plain sight? The merchant continued on his journey the next morning, and the painter remained. But something had shifted in the way she looked at the grove outside her window. She still painted, still filled her days with ink and paper and careful attention, but the quality of her striving had changed, had softened into something like devotion. She painted now not to capture beauty, but to participate in its unfolding. Each stroke was an offering, a conversation, a prayer without words or expectation. And though no one could say exactly how, her paintings became more alive than before. People who saw them felt something stir in their chests, a memory of wholeness. They did not understand why, and the painter could not explain it to them. Some truths cannot be spoken, only transmitted in the silence between heartbeats. Let your breath deepen now, slow and steady, like the tide coming in at dusk. The ocean has been breathing in this rhythm for longer than humans have walked the earth. It will continue long after we are gone, faithful and patient and vast. There is comfort in being part of something so much larger than our small concerns. The worries that seem so heavy in the daylight become lighter in the dark. They are revealed as the temporary visitors they always were, passing through like clouds. The sky does not cling to the clouds or try to push them away. It simply remains, open and spacious, allowing all weather to move through it. You can be like the sky tonight, vast and accepting and fundamentally at peace. The thoughts will come and go, and you will remain, watching them pass. This is not something you need to achieve through effort or concentration. It is your natural state, the ground of being that exists beneath all activity. Simply allow yourself to sink back into that ground, that silent knowing, the way a stone sinks through water effortlessly, drawn by its own nature. A soft call to action, gentle as a whisper, asks nothing of you now. If these teachings bring you peace, you are welcome to subscribe and return whenever you wish. Like leaving a candle burning in the window, this space will be here for you. Now let that thought drift away too, like smoke rising from incense in the dark. There is more to share tonight, more stories from the well of ancient wisdom. This next tale comes from a monastery that once stood on a cliff above the sea. The monks there were known throughout the region for their beautiful chanting at dawn. Travellers would climb the steep path just to hear their voices greet the sun. One young monk among them had a voice that was particularly pure and strong. He could hold a note longer than anyone else, steady as the beam of a lighthouse. The other monks often praised him, and visitors spoke of his gift with wonder. But secretly, the young monk began to feel proud of his beautiful voice. He started to practice alone at night, refining his technique, extending his range. He dreamed of becoming famous, of singing in the great temples of the capital city. His voice grew more skillful, but something began to change in its quality. The other monks could not say exactly what was different, but they felt it. There was a thinness now, a straining, where once there had been effortless flow. The elder of the monastery was a woman of few words and great perception. She noticed the change in the young monk and decided to offer him a teaching. One evening, she invited him to walk with her along the cliff above the sea. They stood together in silence as the sun set in bands of orange and rose. Below them, the waves crashed against the rocks with a sound like distant thunder. The elder asked the young monk to listen carefully to the voice of the ocean. He listened as the waves rolled in, broke against the stone, and pulled back again. Each wave was different, she said, yet each wave was also the same. The ocean did not try to make beautiful sounds or to impress anyone with its power. It simply moved according to its nature, responding to the moon and the wind. The young monk listened, but he did not yet understand what she was teaching. The elder continued, saying that his voice had once been like the ocean. It had risen from somewhere deep within him, natural and true and uncontrived. But now he was trying to manufacture beauty instead of allowing it to flow. He was singing at the ocean instead of singing as the ocean, part of something vast. The young monk felt something crack open in his chest, a wall he had not known existed. Tears came to his eyes as he understood what he had lost in his pursuit of perfection. His pride had separated him from the very source that made his voice beautiful. He had become a performer instead of a vessel, a maker instead of a channel. That night, he returned to his small room and sat in meditation until dawn. He did not practice his scales or work on his breath control or plan his future. He simply sat with the emptiness that his teacher's words had revealed in him, and slowly, over the hours of silence, something began to fill that emptiness. Not pride or ambition or the desire to be special, but something quieter, a kind of devotion that asked nothing in return, that wanted nothing for itself. When the morning chanting began, the young monk opened his mouth to sing. The sound that came out was nothing like what he had been cultivating in private. It was simpler, less polished, less impressive by the standards of technique. But everyone who heard it felt something move in them, some deep chord of recognition. An old woman pilgrim later said it sounded like the ocean had learned to sing. The young monk understood then that his voice was never his to possess. It was a gift that passed through him, like wind through the hollow of a flute. His job was not to control it or perfect it, but to get out of its way, to empty himself so completely that the song could sing itself through his body. This is the teaching that comes to us tonight, carried on the breath of ancient wisdom. We are not here to perform our lives, but to allow life to perform through us. The tight grip of the ego, the endless striving to be special or successful or seen. These are the very walls that separate us from the peace we are seeking, not because there is anything wrong with achievement or beauty or excellence, but because when we cling to them, we lose touch with the source they flow from. The flower does not try to be beautiful. It simply opens to the light and waits, The river does not try to reach the sea. It simply follows the path of least resistance, and you, lying here in the darkness, need not try to achieve peace tonight. Simply allow yourself to open, to follow the natural path of breath and rest. The effort you usually bring to things can take the night off, quietly. There is nothing to accomplish here, nothing to prove, nothing to become, only the gentle descent into what you already are beneath all the noise. Peace is not something we create, it is what remains when we stop struggling. Let these words be like stones skipped across the surface of a still lake. Each one creates ripples that spread outward, then fade, then finally disappear. The lake returns to stillness, unchanged by whatever has touched its surface. You are that lake tonight, vast and deep and perfectly capable of holding everything. The memories, the regrets, the hopes, the fears. They are all just ripples. The depths remain undisturbed, dark and cool and infinitely patient. Sink down now into those depths where the light does not quite reach. There is nothing to see there, nothing to do, nothing to figure out. Only the profound rest of being exactly where you are, held by the water. The night continues its slow rotation around you, stars wheeling in their ancient patterns. Somewhere a night bird calls out, then settles back into the silence of its branch. The world does not need your attention right now, does not require your participation. Everything that needs to happen is happening without your help or interference. The planets turn, the tides rise and fall, new cells replace the old ones in your body. A vast intelligence moves through all things, coordinating billions of processes each second, and you are part of that intelligence, not separate from it, never truly alone. The same force that guides the sparrow home guides your breath through the dark. Trust it tonight. Let it carry you where you need to go without resistance. Another story emerges now from the silence, soft as mist rising from a valley. This one speaks of a gardener who tended the temple grounds for 60 years. She had arrived as a young woman, fleeing some sorrow she never spoke about. The abbot at the time had given her simple work, raking and weeding and planting. She had no special training, no deep understanding of Buddhist philosophy, but she brought her full attention to each task, complete and undivided. Over the decades, the garden became famous throughout the province for its beauty. Visitors came from distant cities to walk its paths and sit beside its pond. They marvelled at how everything seemed to be in perfect harmony with everything else. The mosses and the stones, the trees and the water, the light and the shadow. Nothing was out of place, yet nothing seemed forced or overly designed. When asked about her method, the gardener would only smile and shake her head. She said she had no method, only patience and attention and time. She listened to what each plant wanted, where it wished to grow, how much light it needed. She worked with the garden rather than imposing her will upon it. Every decision was made slowly, after long observation and quiet consideration. Sometimes she would sit for hours, just watching how the light moved across a stone. She understood that the garden was not a thing to be created, but a relationship to be tended. It was alive, changing with each season, growing in ways she could not predict. Her job was not to control it, but to participate in its becoming, to be its partner. One autumn, a young monk came to ask her for advice about his meditation practice. He said that no matter how hard he tried, he could not quiet his mind. Thoughts arose constantly, distracting him, pulling him away from the stillness he sought. The gardener was old by then, her movements slow, her vision fading at the edges, but her eyes were still bright with the kind of clarity that comes from decades of attention. She led the young monk to a corner of the garden where a small stream flowed. The water moved over rocks and pebbles, making small sounds as it passed. She asked the monk to watch the stream and tell her what he saw. He said he saw water moving, rocks staying still, and light dancing on the surface. She nodded and asked him if he was trying to stop the stream from flowing. He laughed and said, "Of course not. That would be impossible and pointless." She smiled and said that his thoughts were like the stream, always flowing. To sit in meditation was not to stop the stream, but to sit beside it peacefully. The stream would flow whether he liked it or not, whether he approved or complained. His suffering came not from the flow of thoughts, but from his resistance to them. He wanted the stream to stop, wanted the garden to be perfectly still and silent. But life was movement, change, the endless flow of one moment into the next. Peace came not from stopping the flow, but from making peace with it, from sitting beside the stream with such complete acceptance that the distinction dissolved. The watcher and the watched, the meditator and the thoughts, becoming one seamless flow. The young monk sat by the stream for a long time after the gardener left. He listened to the water as it made its way over the stones without hurry, and slowly something in him began to relax, to soften, to stop fighting. His thoughts continued to arise, but they no longer seemed like problems to be solved. They were just more water, more movement, more life expressing itself through his mind. He did not achieve some great enlightenment that afternoon in the temple garden, but he took the first step toward a peace that would grow in him for years, all because an old gardener had shown him how to sit beside his own flowing mind. Peace is not found in the stopping of thought, but in the acceptance of its flow. Let your mind flow now, gentle as that stream, over whatever rocks it finds. Do not try to direct it or control it or make it behave in any particular way. Simply be the bank that holds it gently, the ground through which it passes. The thoughts are not problems. They are just the natural movement of a living mind, like the heartbeat, like the breath, like the turning of the earth beneath you, part of the vast unfolding that requires no permission and no approval from you. You can rest even while the stream flows, even while the thoughts continue. The background does not need to be silent for the foreground to be at peace. All the sounds of your mind, the memories, the worries, the fragments of song, they can coexist with the deepest rest you have ever known, without contradiction. Sleep is not the absence of thought, but the presence of a different kind of attention, a softer focus, a looser grip, a willingness to let things be as they are. The gardener who tended the temple grounds for 60 years eventually became too old to work. Her hands shook, her knees ached, her eyes could no longer see the subtle colours. But she continued to visit the garden every day, sitting on a stone by the pond. She would spend hours there, watching the koi move through the green water. Young monks sometimes stopped to ask if she needed anything, and she always said no. Everything she needed was right here, in the light on the water, in the sound of wind. She had spent her whole life learning to pay attention, and now attention was her reward. Not as something she practiced, but as something she had become, her natural state. When she finally passed, they found her sitting upright by the pond at dawn. Her face was peaceful, a slight smile on her lips, her hands resting in her lap. The other monks said she looked exactly as she always did, only more so, as if death had simply revealed what had been there all along beneath the surface. They buried her in the garden she had tended, beneath a maple she had planted, and every autumn, when the leaves turned gold and red and orange, visitors would come. They would sit by her grave and feel something move in them, some deep stillness. Not sadness, but a kind of recognition, a remembering of something they had forgotten, that this was what life was for, the patient attention, this loving presence, that the garden and the gardener were never separate, only two faces of one thing. The night has grown deeper now, the hour later, the silence more complete. If your eyes are still open, let them close, heavy as petals wet with dew. If thoughts still move through your mind, let them move. You do not need to follow. You are sinking deeper now, past the surface waves, past the currents of the day, down to where the water is dark and still and perfectly temperatureless. A place where up and down lose their meaning, where time moves differently. Here, in the depths, you can let go of everything you have been carrying. The responsibilities and the relationships, the failures and the successes. They are far above you now, on the surface, and they will still be there tomorrow. For now you are excused from everything, released from all your duties. The world has given you permission to rest, deeply and completely and without guilt. The breath moves in and out, a tide that asks nothing of you. The heart beats its steady rhythm, faithful and tireless and strong. You do not need to do anything to keep these processes going. They happen on their own, guided by an intelligence older than thought. Trust that intelligence now, the way you trust the ground to hold you up, the way you trust the darkness to eventually give way to light again. Another teaching floats up now from the depths of ancient memory. It concerns a philosopher who spent her life studying the nature of the self. She read every book, attended every lecture, debated every scholar she could find. She built elaborate theories about consciousness and identity in the soul. Her arguments were famous for their precision, their logical rigour, their devastating clarity. Yet privately, she was troubled by a question she could not answer. If the self was what she had spent her whole life studying, why could she not find it? She could find thoughts, sensations, memories, emotions, perceptions. But the thinker of the thoughts, the feeler of the feelings, remained stubbornly hidden. It was like trying to see the eye that was doing the seeing. No matter where she looked, she found only more objects, more experiences, more content. The subject, the one who was having all these experiences, remained elusive. One summer, she travelled to a remote monastery to seek counsel from a teacher. He was known for his simple methods and his refusal to engage in philosophical debate. When she arrived and presented her question, he listened patiently without interrupting. Then he stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the courtyard. He asked her to come and look at the sky with him for a moment. She stood beside him, puzzled, wondering what this had to do with her question. The sky was blue that day, dotted with clouds moving slowly in the wind. The teacher asked her where the sky ended and the clouds began. She started to answer, then stopped, realizing the question was more complex than it seemed. The clouds were in the sky, part of the sky, yet also somehow different from it. You could not draw a line between sky and cloud because they interpenetrated completely. The teacher smiled and said that her question about the self was the same. She was looking for a line between the experiencer and the experience, but there was none. The self she sought was not hidden behind her thoughts and feelings. It was the very activity of thinking and feeling, the process itself, not a separate thing. Like asking where the music is, apart from the vibrating strings and moving air. The music is not in addition to the vibrations. The music is the vibrations experienced. The self is not in addition to the experiences. The self is experience experiencing itself. The philosopher stood at the window for a long time, watching the clouds drift by. Something in her mind, some tight knot of seeking, began to loosen and unwind. She had been looking for something separate, something that could stand apart and observe. But what if there was nothing separate, nothing that stood apart and observed? What if the looking and the looked at were both expressions of the same movement? She could not quite grasp it as a concept, could not fit it into her theories, but she could feel it dimly, like the first light of dawn on the horizon. A vastness that had no edges, no centre, no inside or outside. She had been asking the wrong question all along, seeking the wrong kind of answer. The self was not a thing to be found, but a process to be recognised, not a noun but a verb, not a destination but the journey itself. She stayed at the monastery for many months, learning to rest in not knowing. Her brilliant mind, which had always been her greatest tool, became less important. Not that she stopped thinking, but the thoughts lost their urgency, their desperate grasping. She discovered a peace that was not dependent on having the right answers, a peace that could hold questions without needing to resolve them. Perhaps the greatest wisdom was not knowing, but being at peace with mystery. Tonight, you are invited into that same mystery, that same not knowing. The questions about who you are and why you are here can wait until morning. For now, let yourself dissolve into the darkness like salt dissolving in water. You do not need to figure anything out, do not need to understand or analyze. Simply be the way a stone simply is, the way the darkness simply is. Existence requires no explanation, no justification, no elaborate theory to support it. It just is, and you are part of it, and that is enough for tonight. Peace is not something we create. It is what remains when we stop struggling. The thoughts that rise are not you. They are clouds crossing the sky of awareness. You are the sky, vast and unchanging, holding all weather with equal acceptance. Storms come, and you remain. Clear days come, and you remain. Nothing that happens in the sky can damage or diminish the sky itself. The same is true of you, of the awareness that is reading these words right now. It has been present through every experience of your life, unchanged and undamaged. Every moment of joy and sorrow, triumph and defeat has passed through this awareness, and awareness remains, like the sky remains, patient and vast and free. This is not something you need to achieve or attain through practice. It is what you already are, beneath the layers of thought and identity. The meditation is not about becoming something new, but recognizing what has always been. Like clearing fog from a mirror, we do not create the reflection, only reveal it. Your original face, the face you had before your parents were born. It has never been lost, only obscured by the busy traffic of mental activity. Tonight, as the traffic slows and the fog clears, perhaps you will glimpse it, not as an experience among other experiences, but as the ground of all experience, the knowing in which all things are known, the seeing in which all things are seen. Let the breath be your anchor now, a point of return when the mind wanders, not a forced focus, but a gentle remembering, a coming home. The belly rises with the in-breath, falls with the out-breath, naturally and easily. You do not need to control this rhythm or improve it in any way. Simply notice it, the way you might notice the sound of rain on a roof, present, continuous, requiring nothing from you but a soft kind of attention. With each breath, you sink a little deeper into the cushion of the night. The muscles that have been holding tension finally give up their guarding. The jaw unclenches, the shoulders drop, the forehead smooths like water after wind. There is so much holding that we do without realizing it, so much unnecessary effort. The body is always trying to protect us, always vigilant, always on alert. But tonight there is nothing to protect against, no danger requiring your attention. The world is quiet and dark and surprisingly safe, at least for these few hours. You can let the guard down completely, can rest with no reservations. The part of you that watches for threats, that prepares for disaster, that plans ahead. It can take the night off, can join you in this deep surrender to what is. Nothing needs to be figured out, nothing needs to be prevented or achieved. Only this breath, only this moment, only this inexhaustible peace. A final story rises now, slower than the others, heavier with the weight of rest. It speaks of a temple that once stood at the edge of a great forest. The temple was famous for a single treasure, an ancient scroll of calligraphy. The scroll contained only one word, brushed in ink that had faded over centuries. No one remembered what the word said or who had written it so long ago, but visitors came from everywhere to sit before the scroll in silence. Some said they could feel a presence emanating from the faded characters. Others said the scroll contained the secret of enlightenment, hidden in plain sight. The monk who cared for the temple was a simple man of few words. He spent his days sweeping the floors and tending the small garden outside. He had never paid much attention to the famous scroll on the wall. To him, it was just another object in the temple, no more special than the broom. One night, a fire broke out in the forest and spread quickly toward the temple. The villagers rushed to help, carrying buckets of water from the nearby stream. But the fire was too fast, too hungry, and soon the temple was ablaze. The monk watched as the flames consumed the building he had cared for all his life. When the villagers asked about the scroll, he only shook his head gently. He said that the word on the scroll had been the same word as the fire, the same word as the water that could not save it, the same word as the ash. All things rise and fall, come together and come apart, are born and die. The word on the scroll was simply the acknowledgement of this truth, and now the fire was teaching the same lesson the scroll had taught for centuries. The villagers did not understand, but they stopped trying to save what was already lost. They sat with the monk in the grass beyond the flames and watched the temple burn. And in the watching, something opened in them that had been closed for a long time, a recognition of the preciousness of things precisely because they do not last. The temple had never been permanent. Nothing they loved had ever been permanent. This was not cause for sadness, but for deeper appreciation, for sharper attention, for seeing things as they really were, fleeting and beautiful and utterly unique. When dawn came, only ashes and a few charred beams remained of the temple. The famous scroll was gone forever, its secret teaching consumed by the flames. But the monk was not sad. He began to gather stones from the rubble. He said he would build a new temple, smaller and simpler than the old one, and on the wall of this new temple he would hang a blank scroll. The teaching, he said, had never been in the ink, but in the emptiness around it. The fire had only revealed what was true all along, that nothing is ever lost, only transformed, only recycled into new forms by the eternal creativity of life. The ashes of the old scroll would become soil for the garden outside. The garden would grow, and seasons would pass, and everything would continue. Peace is not something we create. It is what remains when we stop struggling. The night is very deep now, and you are held in its soft arms. Whatever has been lost in your life, whatever has been taken or transformed, it is not gone, but only changed, scattered into a million invisible forms. The love you have given is still circulating somewhere in the world tonight. The kindness you have received is still warming someone you may never meet. Nothing is wasted, nothing truly destroyed, only endlessly rearranged and renewed. This is not a belief to hold, but a truth to rest in, a ground beneath the ground. Even when everything seems to be falling apart, the falling apart is itself whole. Even when the fire consumes the temple, the fire and the temple are one movement. You do not need to understand this with your mind to feel its truth in your body. The body knows about impermanence in a way the mind can never fully grasp. It has been dissolving and rebuilding itself every moment since you were born. The cells you had as a child are long gone, replaced by new ones countless times, and yet you persist, you continue, you are still recognizably you. Identity is not in the matter, but in the pattern, the dance, the ongoing process. You are not a thing, but a happening, a river that maintains its shape while the water flows. Tonight, let the water flow. Let whatever needs to pass through you pass through. There is no dam strong enough to hold back the river of life forever, and there is no need to try, no benefit to the constant effort of resistance. Surrender is not defeat, but wisdom, the recognition of how things actually work. The leaf does not resist the autumn wind, but lets itself be carried, and in that letting go, it finds a freedom it never knew when it was clinging. Perhaps there is something you are clinging to, some identity or story or hope, something you believe you cannot live without, cannot be happy if it changes. Tonight, in the safety of this darkness, you can practice loosening your grip just slightly, not abandoning anything, not giving up, but holding a little more lightly. Seeing that what you are is bigger than any of the things you hold, that you can remain whole even as the contents of your life shift and change. This is the deepest peace, the peace that does not depend on circumstances, the peace of the sky that holds all weather, the peace of the ocean beneath the waves. It has always been here, waiting for you to stop and notice, waiting for a night like this, when you finally gave yourself permission to rest. The breath slows now to its own natural rhythm, deep and even and calm. The in-breath comes when it comes, the out-breath goes when it goes. You are not doing the breathing anymore. The breathing is doing you, carried along by a force that asks nothing in return for its endless faithfulness. Each exhale is a small death, a letting go, a surrender to the next moment. Each inhale is a small birth, a receiving, an acceptance of the gift of another breath. Between them, in the pause, there is something that has no name. A stillness that is not empty but full, alive, aware, utterly present. This is what the mystics have always been pointing to with their strange words. Not another experience to have, but the ground from which all experience arises. You do not need to understand it to rest in it, do not need to name it to be it. It is closer than your own heartbeat, more intimate than your next thought. The awareness that is reading these words right now, right now, right now. It has never been elsewhere, has never been anyone else's, has never been lost. All the seeking and the finding, the losing and the recovering. All of it has happened within this awareness that neither comes nor goes. You are home, have always been home, will always be home, no matter what. The night wraps around you now like a blanket woven from darkness and stars. Somewhere far away, the first hint of dawn is beginning to lighten the sky. But you do not need to think about tomorrow, do not need to prepare for the day. That will come when it comes, and you will meet it with whatever you have. For now, there is only this breath, this moment, this surrender. The candle that has been burning through the night is very low now. Its flame flickers once, twice, then steadies again for a little while longer. It does not know when it will go out, does not worry about its ending. It simply gives its light moment by moment until the wax is gone. And even then the light is not truly gone, but only transformed into warmth, into memory, into the next candle someone lights in another room. You are like that flame tonight, giving whatever light you have without reservation. Not because you should or must, but because that is what flames do. They shine, and when they stop shining, other flames take up the light. Nothing is lost, nothing wasted, nothing ever truly gone. Only changed, only continuing in forms we cannot always recognize. The darkness is complete now, warm and soft and utterly safe. Your body has become very heavy, sinking into the surface beneath you. The pillow holds your head the way water holds a floating leaf. There is no effort required to stay afloat, no struggle against gravity. Simply resting, simply being, simply letting the night do its gentle work. The mind has grown quiet now, the thoughts fewer and farther between. Like stars going out one by one as the sky lightens toward dawn. They will return tomorrow, bright and numerous, ready for another day. But now they can rest, can fade into the background of pure awareness. Consciousness without content, awareness without object, the mind at peace with itself. This is sleep approaching, not as an escape but as a homecoming. The return to a state you know well, a place you visit every night. It welcomes you back without judgment, without conditions, without asking anything, simply opening its arms and receiving you into its dark embrace. Let yourself fall now, gently, softly, without fear or resistance, the way a feather falls, drifting on invisible currents, taking its time. There is no bottom to this falling, no hard ground waiting to catch you. Only endless softness, endless depth, endless peace. The last few thoughts are fading now, dissolving like mist in morning sun. They were never solid to begin with, only patterns of energy, brief and temporary. Like ripples on water, they spread out and fade, leaving the surface smooth. And beneath that surface, a great stillness that has never been disturbed. The stillness that was there before you were born and will be there after. The stillness that holds all movement within it without being moved itself. You are that stillness tonight, vast and unchanging and free. The breath continues on its own, steady and faithful as a heartbeat. The body rests in the darkness, held by forces older than memory. And somewhere, deeper than thought, deeper than dream, you simply are. Not becoming anything, not going anywhere, not needing anything at all. Complete in this moment, whole in this darkness, perfect in this peace. The candle burns low. The night continues. The stars wheel overhead in their ancient dance. And you are here. You are home. You are exactly where you need to be. The world will go on without your participation for a few hours now. The moon will continue its journey across the sky whether you watch or not. The ocean will breathe its tides. The forests will whisper. The mountains will stand. All of it holding you, supporting you, making space for your rest. Tomorrow will come with its gifts and its challenges, its joys and its sorrows. But that is tomorrow, and tomorrow can wait for its own time. Right now, there is only this peace, this quiet, this gentle surrender. The thoughts that remain are very soft now, barely audible, almost silent. They drift like dust motes in a sunbeam, slowly, slowly, slowly settling, and the awareness that watches them is growing dimmer, softer, more diffuse, not disappearing but expanding, spreading out to fill the entire night, becoming indistinguishable from the darkness, from the stars, from the silence. No longer a point of view, but the space in which all views appear. This is the edge of sleep, the threshold, the doorway to the other side. You have crossed it thousands of times before, always arriving safely. There is nothing to fear in this crossing, nothing to prepare for or avoid, simply letting go, simply falling, simply trusting the darkness to catch you. The way you trusted as an infant before you learned to fear. The way the earth trusts the sun to rise each morning without fail. That kind of trust, that kind of surrender, that kind of peace. And as the candle burns low, as the night deepens, as the breath slows, you are carried gently into the place where all stories end and begin, where there is no separation between dreamer and dream, between self and world, only the vast ocean of consciousness, calm and dark and infinitely deep, resting there now, held there now, home at last in the heart of silence. The world continues quietly without you needing to do a thing. The breath moves on its own, the heart beats on its own, and all is well, all is well, all is well. Sleep now, rest now, let the night hold you. You have done enough, you have been enough, you are enough, and tomorrow, when the light returns, you will wake refreshed and renewed, carrying with you something from this peace, some trace of this stillness, not as a memory, but as a knowing, a deep recognition of what you are. But that is tomorrow. For now there is only rest, only this breath, only this moment, only this peace. The candle flickers once more, then settles into its final steady glow, and in that glow, in that warmth, in that gentle golden light, you are held, you are safe, you are home. Sleep well, dear friend. Sleep deeply and dream sweetly. The night is here. The breath moves on its own, and all is well.